Welcome back, everybody, to Betsy C Helps You Stop Math Struggles. And today we're going to be talking about how to be flexible in our math class, whether it's in the brick and mortar classroom, the online classroom, the at home classroom, and for you parents who are just trying to help with homework. Let's talk a little bit about how we can use some flexibility with what we do. So, thinking about the struggles that your student has with the assignments. What can you do? What can you control in the situation? Right. So, how are you going to be flexible? How are you going to help them out? How are you going to lighten the load? So, there's lots of ways that we can do that. Okay. So, first of all, take a deep breath, take a moment. I'm sure you have different routines in your classroom where you help set up students for success every day. So let's think about those routines and how we can implement them even 20 minutes into the classroom or even at the end of the classroom, and how they might take these home to help with their homework later on. So let's think about how can we be flexible? It's all about flexibility right now, especially at the end of the school year. You're giving lots of fun projects, which in my opinion, you should do all throughout the year, not just at the very end. Maybe at the beginning of the year, you start with a project. That's another way to be flexible in how we're doing math class, right? So as a teacher who started in brick and mortar, moved on to the virtual world, and then have a student in a classroom setting, I just have learned that there's a lot of different ways to make things happen. Okay. So, in the state that we live in, it is now about 51% of students are no longer in the brick and mortar classroom. They're either virtually or homeschool, right? So, we are moving to an era where flexibility is key. We got to make sure that what we are doing is helping students learn, even if the student is just our own kid, or even if we have 30 students in a classroom and everybody learns at a different rate. So, again, start your stretches, which, stretch a little here, stretch a little there, stretch in the mind. We are talking about flexibility and how we can make things better with math. So, you guys know that I love using the times tables list when we're talking about multiplication, division, anything that deals with those fact families that everyone likes to do one way or the other, whether you're making triangles, whether you're using dots, I don't care what you do. If you have this available to your students, make them use it. Make them use it. It doesn't help to just say, well, you have that times tables list. What'd you do with it? Because if it's my kid, he's gonna be like, yeah, that's great. It was sitting there. I forgot all about it. It could literally be sitting next to him all day, every day, which it is, and he will forget. Okay, so think about that ADD kid. Think about that kid who has a learning difference. Think about that kid who just doesn't care about math class. This could be sitting next to him or her. You know, them. We'll go with them. This could be sitting next to them all day, every day. And if you, as a teacher, don't remind them to look at it and use it in some way, shape, or form, that's where we have to be flexible. Think about how many times do you have to tell your child to empty the dishwasher? Now, before I had a kid, I didn't even think about this. I was just like in class and I'm like, oh my goodness, how many times do I have to tell Joey, you know, check the times tables list. Take out your notes. Show me your notes. Bring me your notes. Did you use your notes for homework? Right? And then I became a parent and it turned into, did you empty the dishwasher? Did you empty the dishwasher? Did you empty the dishwasher? Have you emptied the dishwasher yet? Can you please stop gaming? Can you please stop talking to your friends on the phone? Have you emptied the dishwasher? Have you emptied the dishwasher? So, flexibility is the name of the game. And it's not about the student, it's about you, the teacher, the person giving the information. Being flexible in your mind and saying to yourself, I know I told this kid 18 times just yesterday to use that times tables list, but I'm going to do a little neck stretching. I'm going to who saw it. And I'm going to remember that in that movie, 50 First Dates, the Adam Sandler character came up with a brilliant idea to make sure that his now wife, towards the end of the movie, doesn't freak out when she wakes up, right? He made that lovely video for her to watch. So these are your students. No matter how many times they wake up, it's like a whole new day. It's like they've never seen it before. So the flexibility has to come from you, the teacher, okay? Because you are going to be the one that tells them again and again and again the tools to use. So let's talk about like how this helps with the fluency part. That's everyone's favorite F word in math, fluency, but it doesn't really matter anymore. Think of the world we live in today, okay? Not the world we lived in 40 years ago, 50 years ago, even 60 years ago. Even, I think I got my first cell phone in the year 2001. 2001, 2002. I know it was after college. So it wasn't until after I graduated college in 2001 that I got my first cell phone. And miraculously, I still have the same phone number. But besides that, before then, yes, you needed to know these things. Yes, it was longer to do the work. And I remember actually teaching brick and mortar, and I was a sixth grade math teacher. And I had a student come in, and we were, I don't know, doing something with algebra, pre-algebra, algebraic expressions. Who knows what it was? I don't honestly know, but I remember it had multiplication in it. And this is where I had to be flexible because all of a sudden, this student starts drawing a giant rectangle and putting some boxes in it. I was like, why are we making an Excel spreadsheet on our desk? Like, what is happening here? We're just trying to multiply. And the student, put some numbers at the top, put some numbers on the side, and then all these diagonals. And I was like, oh my goodness, what are we drawing? Or what is happening here? We're spending 5 minutes on making what it is apparently called lattice multiplication. He had learned it in elementary school. He loved it. It was his favorite thing to do. And I was like, dude, why don't you just use the calculator? Right? Because I'm okay with calculators. Now, some teachers don't like that, which I'm being flexible and trying to understand why. But this kid's drawn out a whole lattice thing, and I didn't even know what it was. I was like, Mark, what are you doing? What is this? We're just trying to multiply. I think we were multiplying decimals. And he was like, oh, this is so great. Look what my teacher taught me. And literally, it took him 10 minutes to do this one problem because he was doing this whole lattice stuff. And I was like, okay, I got to call my friend because she teaches elementary school, and I sent her like a picture of it, and I was like, "What is this? Why is this kid doing it?" And I don't understand any of it. And she explained the whole thing to me, and I was like, "This kid's never going to get through the 10 problems that are on this page, or it's going to take him forever because he wants to use this whole lattice thing." And she was like, "Yeah, but the kids love it. It's great here. They're learning blah blah blah." And I was like, "They're learning a lot of fun things, but it has nothing to do with the process of like multiplying decimals and what it all means and the procedures and stuff." So I had to be flexible in that moment and say, okay, I learned a new tool. I understand why this kid did it. He learned it back in elementary school. He understood that process. He applied it to something else. And then I had to, in that moment, say, what are we going to do in sixth grade class to help speed it up? Because I do not want this kid spending an hour doing work because he's working on the lattice the whole time. So in sixth grade where I was teaching, you could totally use just, a dollar store calculator, but I wanted to make sure they understood the whole decimal part of it. So flexibility came into play there, right? How do we take what they know, turn it into what's going to help them with this class, and, navigate that whole thing? I had to be flexible. So flexibility happens all the time in your classroom. Flexibility happens all the time when you're doing homework at home because I hear a lot of teachers say, I don't know if they're using Chat GPT. I don't know if they had their parent help them. I don't do homework, and look at it for the answer because who knows who told them what it was. Well, then don't give homework if that's your whole thing about it. Now you can change your homework Flexibility. That is the word we're going with today. You can make your homework about the procedures. You can make your homework about the steps, but you have to require that. You have to grade that part of it. You have to say that these are the important pieces that I want you to practice at home. So when you get back to class, we have a little bit more understanding of what's going on. And I can help you with the part that you didn't understand, or I can help you if you got stuck on step 3 every single time. Now we know where to go in class, right? So flexibility is required by the teacher, not necessarily by the student all the time. And I promise, if you have this lovely, I don't even know why this was given to my kid in 6th grade, maybe it was 7th grade. I don't know. They must have been reviewing, right? But multiplying fractions and stuff. Um, how does multiplying fractions go back to this times tables list? Because if you have a student who has a math learning disability, dyscalculia, they're never going to memorize these times tables. And if you are not flexible in the idea of using calculators, you really want them to do it by themselves, then if you're asking a student to do 2 times 3 and they just don't have it memorized, tell them to go look it up on the times tables list. Okay, they can look it up, they can see it, their mind sees it, a whole different part, not the parietal lobe that dumps all the math facts. There's all different parts of their brain that are working. So you being flexible in saying, let's use a times tables list. If you really don't want to use a calculator, you're helping that student. You're helping that student to see the correct answer. The more often they see the correct answer, the more likely some part of the brain somewhere in there might keep it. Okay. Now, if you have a student who is a low achiever, right, they're just lower numeracy, um, using the times tables chart more often. Again, you have to require it. That's the flexibility part that comes from you. You have to say, go to the times tables list, right? You have to do that as the teacher. You have to make that a requirement. Okay. Now, the student with low numeracy, eventually, because they don't have dyscalculia, they don't have the learning difference. They just need extra practice. They need extra time. They need more reminders. And then eventually their brain's going to get it and it's going to click, right? That is the low numeracy, low achieving student, not the student with a diagnosed or you know, self understood diagnosis that they have dyscalculia. So you have to know that the student with the math learning disability is never going to remember them, and you need to be flexible and let them use all the different tools that are available. And a dollar store calculator is wonderful for that. Now, what if you're doing this kind of review? Right? You might be saying, how is that times tables list going to help them with, this problem here? So how many of you use that partial product stuff? How many might say to a student, why don't we just start with a guess, right? So we have our 6,308 divided by 76. What if I just said, my times tables list with the times 10, 10 times 12 is 120. Definitely need more than that. But what if I said, 76 times 10, right? So here you might be talking to the student, 76 times 10, that is 760. And you're going to be like, well, 760 is really far away from 6,000. But if we're just focusing on the hundreds parts, 760 is bigger than 630. So maybe we do 7 times 8. Let's just, 7 times 8. 76 times 8. I was getting ahead of myself. The flexibility went in there and tried to jump ahead. And that happens with your students a lot too. So you have to be like, oh, wait, we're not doing 7 times 8 just yet. We're doing 76 times 8. And so now you're like, okay, 76 times 8 is not on your little times tables list, is it? No, it's not. But you know what is? 8 times 6 and 8 times 7. So we can go back to the old school, right? Because we're old fools who are so cool. And we can start saying, what is 76 times 8? Using that old school algorithm. What's 8 times 6? Because I don't know. And you're like, okay, go to the times tables chart. 8 times 6 is 48, right? So we're carrying the 4, we're putting the 8 down here. Again, so you are reminding them that there are multiple ways to get started with the problem, right? We're not using a calculator. We're using different procedures, different techniques, things that you've practiced in school, partial products, the old school algorithm. I mean, we could pick anyway. This is where the flexibility comes in. You want the student to be thinking about math, not thinking about whatever else they might be thinking about, not thinking about how unsmart they are, not thinking about how hard this class is, not thinking about Bobby over there who knows all these times tables and he's always doing those minute drills all the time and he's so smart. He's yelling out the answers and stuff. No, we're going to be flexible and we're going to say, you know what? We're going to give all of our students time. Bobby could just go ahead. He could just do that whole worksheet. He can go ahead and work on these other fun finishers. He can go on that digital, you know, I don't want to put any program names out there. So he can go on that little digital download and practice all those higher level things, right? Flexibility in the classroom requires you as the teacher to understand that you're going to have all these different things happening all at once, but you've planned for them, right? If you have early finishers, they have something to do. If you have students who are struggling, maybe you allow partner work, right? But you're walking around and you're saying, don't just give Joe the answer, talk about the steps. Say, because I'm not just grading the answer. Like if you just put answers on all of here, you're going to get 5 points. But if you start showing some work, you're going to get 20 points. You as a teacher have to require those things because that is how we learn the processes. That's how we start to understand what the students are understanding. That's how we level everything up and level everything down, however we need to do it. And by providing these tools, and by requiring the use of the tools, that flexibility is going to help with all those other things you want them to learn, like fluency, facts. Let me tell you, the more often the student who has low numeracy sees the correct answer, the more likely it's going to click in their mind and it's going to stick with them. It does not happen in a week. It does not happen in a month. And for the student who has dyscalculia, it never happens. But we're going to be flexible and we're going to remind them that it does not make them less than someone else. It just means they have to use their tools all the time. Let me tell you, a plumber uses lots of tools all the time. Okay? So electricians have lots of tools that they use every single time. The guy standing outside of the school who does the crosswalk, he has tools. He's got that yellow vest going. He's got the little stop sign. He's got the whistle. And let me tell you, our crossing guard uses that whistle a lot because those kids do not listen. And they're coming to your class. They're showing up to class already not listening. So flexibility, flexibility and how we get things done, how we provide the correct accommodations, we make students use them. And here's a big thing that you need to understand: accommodations help everybody in your classroom. Everybody. Bobby, who's going way ahead of everybody else, and Joey, who needs to look at it every single time, and all the kids in between. Okay? It's going to help your low numeracy students get better. All right? You're going to have to be flexible and have something for those early finishers to do, right? And you're going to have to be flexible and remember that that couple set of students who have that learning disability are going to need you to remind them every single time to use the tools, and you have to require it, okay? Because that's how they are going to level up. That's how they're going to get better confidence. The more confident, the more successful, the more open they are to learning what you want them to learn in class. So, today's takeaway is be flexible. Let's talk about how we are being flexible. areas where we can improve on flexibility. And let's just start the discussion of flexibility being the new F word in math class.